I gotta tell you, this is really what's happening on election morning as they're trying to check in all the precincts. The staff behind us makes sure that all the people out there are up and operating, that the staff is there, the deputies are there, the clerks are there, the voters have the keys to the door. There's all kinds of minor little things that can go wrong on election morning. Somebody forgot to give somebody the key, somebody forgot to turn on a machine, somebody got confused, the deputy didn't show up. And by law, we have to have a deputy there at every precinct, okay? And so if the deputy doesn't show up, we got a problem. And so Cindy and Laura, a couple of our staff, they will be working to make sure that everybody showed up. The staff is checking in every precinct to make sure that they're up and operating, that there's no issues. You know, you always have minor issues. When you got as much equipment out in the field as we do, and we have thousands of pieces of equipment, literally thousands of pieces of equipment out there, I'm sure that some machine is not going to turn on, some computer's not going to kick up, some phone is not going to work. And so even though our staff has went out and checked out all the phone lines, they've made sure that all the equipment is working, all of a sudden, you know, you get a lightning storm last night in Paris, you get a little thunderstorm somewhere else, and all of a sudden the phone stalls down and the rest of it. And so we got to make sure that everything's up and operating and that the voter has a pleasant experience when they get there. We know that there's going to be a line at 7 o'clock in the morning. All precincts are going to have a line at 7 o'clock in the morning. That's not what bothers us. What bothers us is, do we have a line at 9:30 in the morning? Okay, then we know we've certainly got issues. And so that's really what they're working on. These people will be answering phone calls. At 6:30 in the morning, it starts in here, and it's literally a zoo. Most of the staff gets here at 6, and they start answering the phone calls and what the issue is. We hire our staff, we pay them. They will be hiring somewhere around 800 to 900, depending on the election. But we'll have another crew of 12 to 14 people just delivering equipment. Then we have the phone bank in here. You've got all the poll workers out there, all of the deputies, all the clerks, all the assistant clerks, the EVIT operators. You have all that staff out there. And Laura and Cindy are the ones that do all of that training and working with them. And then, of course, inside, Sharon Strife, who's really been, you know, our number 3 person and our savior since I got here, between her and Scott, they've got to make sure that all the equipment is up and operating. Every piece of equipment out in that field has to be programmed to make sure that it fits the precinct that it's in. And so every piece of equipment, she has to sit down there and program every one of them so the right precinct gets the right ballot, out there. We wanted to make sure that we monitored the taxpayer of Manatee County's money properly. And so we looked last year at any precincts that were what we considered underperforming for the amount of staff we had to put in. And then when I was running for election, we heard so many people in Manatee County say, when are we going to have more early voting sites? When are we going to have more early voting sites? And so we went from 1 to 4. Well, in order to do that and keep the budget in line, we had to look at those non-performing precincts. And everybody's okay shutting down your precinct, just don't shut down mine. So that was caused some issues. But we still wanted to make sure that everybody had the opportunity to vote when they wanted to vote and where they wanted to vote. So right now we have new precincts. We're down to 70 from a grand total of around 90 some odd. But with the 4 early voting sites, and thank gosh for absentee ballots. We have had a higher turnout with absentee ballots this year than's ever been recorded in the history of Manatee County for a primary election. We've mailed out and received over 40,000. We've received over 21,000 come back. We're still coming in. They come in until 7 o'clock this evening. And so our staff is processing them. So there's been some changes. I picked up Scott Farrington. I was very, very lucky to find Scott. Scott had been number 2 person down in Sarasota for like 10 years, and he joined us up here. So we've just got a great team, and it's working out great. You know, we'll be locked in here pretty much all day. Now this afternoon, probably around 10 o'clock, I'll be able to get out in the field and I'll go out to see some of the precincts and do it. We're certainly interested in the Renaissance Center and some of those new ones that we did. We want to make sure that everything is going well down there. You know, you have some minor glitches. We had a minor glitch out at Kirby Stewart. I mean, here's Kirby Stewart, a VA hall, one of the largest in the area. And wouldn't you know, we get all set up to go out there to vote today and find out that they took all the air conditioning out of the building day before yesterday. And so, or actually yesterday, they took all the air conditioners out. So we immediately had to hustle and get a air conditioning company to go out and set up some temporary air conditioning so we could use that as a voting site. In fact, I'd wanted to use that as an early voting site, and I'm still going to try to negotiate with the people out there and see if we can't get that done. But so those are the things you're looking for. Somebody didn't show up with the keys. Somebody couldn't get into the back room. The phone didn't work. So you got a lot of minor issues that they'll be on. I've often said, this is certainly not about me, but when you look at the dedication of the staff that we have here, whether it's recruiting poll workers or training people, bringing them all in, the staff of Manatee County really watches that their votes count. They watch that their money is well spent, that it's not wasted. Some people have accused me and say, well, you've shut down too many precincts in the interest of saving money. Well, you know, I don't think the voters of Manatee County are really interested in having their taxes raised so we can have the convenience of an additional poll location. We had some poll locations literally straight across the street from each other, okay? We had some polling locations that were not ADA compliant, and we want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to vote. And if you've got a polling location that people that need help can't get in and vote, we got the wrong location. So that's really what I want people to know, is the people of Manatee County, that Supervisor of Elections Office is great stewards of their money.
Well, we do recruit from certain areas, especially out east in the Myakka area and out on the islands. We try to get our current poll workers that are good to recruit their friends and neighbors and people that they are in clubs with and go to church with. We try to recruit new people that way. We also solicit from the Hispanic community to get folks that speak Spanish. We try to have a Spanish speaker in areas where that would be helpful. And then we do training prior to every election. We train probably about 900 people for this election. We had some reserve people that we train and have on call, and we called some of them this morning about 6:30, woke them up and gave them their assignments. So we do training, like I said, prior to every election, and then we do certification training during off times. We ask folks that are interested in training to be clerks and assistant clerks to come in, and I just finished a class of 24 new assistant clerks over the summer, and we placed most of them for this election. The folks here, they're either members of our staff or poll workers that can handle answering a phone and looking a voter up on the computer. And we have direct lines from all the precincts into the phone bank. They can call and check on the status of the voter's eligibility to vote. If they move in from another county on election day, they're going to be calling in here, and we'll be looking them up in our live database and actually pulling them into our county and then giving them the opportunity to vote here. I can't say enough about the people that work here. We're a very small, dedicated staff. There's only 15 of us that work full-time year-round. But on election day, as you see, there's a whole lot more of us. And the people are very dedicated. Our mission is to make sure that everyone votes. So we're here to help, and we're here to support the folks that are out at the precincts representing us on election day. I arrived at 5:30 this morning. The other poll worker coordinator, Cindy Nelson, she and I arrive at 5:30 to make the calls to if someone doesn't show up or needs to be replaced, we have to make those calls. And if the poll worker is on reserve, they're on reserve till 8 a.m. So we have up until 8 a.m. to call them and let them know. We ask them to be ready, to have their food and beverages packed and be kind of up and alert so that if we call them, they're ready to go. And the folks here are taking calls from the precinct. First thing, they're going to get calls from each of the precincts letting them know that they're up and ready. We have to hear from every precinct prior to 7 a.m. because at 7 a.m. the clerk goes outside and announces that the polls are open. And so we want to be sure that everything is up and ready. If they're having an issue with a piece of equipment, then we're going to try to help them, talk them through getting it up and going, or we're going to send somebody out to help them. Get them up, get them ready.
Well, as far as the phone bank goes, we start out in the morning. We take the calls, making sure all the precincts are ready to go, making sure that all the equipment has been prepared and set up and turned on properly, making sure all the poll workers get there, and then throughout the day, the phone bank still is active. We get phone calls from precincts regarding voters, if they can't find a voter, if the voter has moved and needs to change their address, all that type of thing. So we stay fairly busy throughout the day here. The questions that they get are all from the precinct, from the poll workers. The phone calls can range in a wide variety of different topics, from equipment problems, which we haven't had many of this morning, which is very good, to I need more signs, a voter doesn't know where to go, where do I send them, to is this voter registered, or they requested an absentee ballot and have they voted that absentee ballot yet, or are they eligible to vote in the polls? A huge variety of different types of questions. We even get questions from regarding candidates. What is a candidate allowed to do at the polls? Their signage, maybe their signage isn't in the right spot, all sorts of different questions. The elections business is a very unique business, and the accuracy is more important than in almost any other industry I've ever worked in. When you look at the presidential election between Gore and Bush and how close it was, and what it came down to in the end, you don't have a do-over. It's not like you can say, well, we're not really sure, let's start over and do it again. So we got to get it right the first time, and by getting it right the first time, that means that we really do strive for perfection. We are all human, so perfection isn't really attainable, but we get as close as we can. And the reason is because, you have all these candidates, you have all these voters that expect everything to be right. And of course, we want to provide that for them. Planning starts very far out. As a matter of fact, when we're done with the general election, we'll start planning for the next set of elections, 2 years away. We start out about 6 months ahead of time, actually almost a year ahead of time, making sure we have the facilities locked down that we need. We start out about 6 months ahead of time, making sure that all of our poll workers, we have all of the numbers we need. They know when their training is. They know, we know if someone isn't going to be available, who can we slide into their spot, all of that sort of thing. So you're talking at least a year out, and really, sometimes farther out. And then as you get closer, the different steps, we have our qualifying that happens a little over 2 months out. And so that's at the point when we know who the candidates are going to be. We start creating the ballot. We start sending out the ballots 45 days out. So, the closer you get to the election, of course, the activity raises up, but we start quite a ways out. The poll workers and the workers we use here in the office, they come from all different areas, and I'll be honest, I'm really surprised how we find some of them. Some of them hear about it from relatives or neighbors. Some of them were poll workers in a different state. They come down here and they want to figure out, how do I be a poll worker here? You notice that a lot of them are retired age, and that's because we need them for one day. It's not like we can provide a full-time income for them. So a lot of them are of a retirement age, or and they're maybe in an area where they can afford to take a day, or their schedule is like a realtor or things like that. We find them usually through word of mouth. We do advertise from time to time, but mostly it's through word of mouth. From one poll worker gets their neighbors, their family members, and then it just spreads from there. Well, of course, the first thing we want them to know is that we want them to vote. Especially, the primary frequently is a low turnout election, and for us that's always very disappointing, because we put as much work into a primary election as we do into a general, and in a lot of ways it's more complicated to put on the primary because we have 3 different parties, we have to types of ballots, we have to make sure everybody gets the right type of ballot, and all of that type of activity goes into it, and yet we don't always get the same number of people that come out and vote. So and a lot of people say, well, the primary doesn't really matter, and it's just as important as any other election, because this is where you get to choose, of course, the candidate that goes on to the next race, but it's also where certain races, this is where the decision's going to be made. The school board race, the judges race, It's not going to appear on the general election. It's only on the primary election. So it's just as important as the general, and we want everybody to know how much work we put into it, and we want them to come out and make their voice heard.
When they open these ballots, the person who's slicing them open, they don't pull them out. They hand them to someone else. They separate the envelope and the envelope and the secrecy sleeve, so the envelope and the ballot never get back together again. So nobody knows who's actually doing and voting in a particular way. Then they count all of the envelopes and count all of the ballots. And believe me, it's a zoo when you have one more envelope than you do ballots, or one more ballot than you do envelopes. And the ladies literally will spend hours trying to find that one ballot that we're missing, because we want to make sure that everybody's vote counts. And it's kind of interesting because sometimes you get messed up, and a man and his wife decide they're going to save postage and put 2 ballots in one envelope, and if the envelopes and the ballots don't match, they have to make sure that they do. And so they count every single one of them. After they've counted them, they get them all in here. They're all time stamped to know when they come in. So we know exactly when that ballot hit the door. And people can go online and see that their ballot's been turned in, that their ballot has been counted, it's been checked in. But we don't know what their ballot says. We don't know who voted it. And to be quite honest with you, after you look at over 20,000, we don't care, okay? We just want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to vote. After that, we have to take the envelopes, because sometimes the signatures don't match. People don't sign it. If they don't sign it, we can't count it, because by Florida law, that ballot has to be signed. And so that's really the process we're going through. We've already completely processed and counted over 19,000 votes. We've gotten over 20,000 in, and they're working on the last of them today. But we will still be processing them tonight at 7 o'clock. We will shut down out front. We cannot accept a ballot after 7 o'clock if it's in our box out in front. So if anybody is out there and they haven't turned in their ballot, always remember that they can get it to the supervisor's office, drop it in the slot before 7 o'clock on election night, and their ballot will count. I got to tell you, the luckiest thing that happened to me when I got here was the staff, because they had all been here for several years, and they have all been trained, well trained by Bob and Nancy before I ever got here, and they're the ones that really make it happen. Sometimes I wonder why they have me down here. However, and I really mean that, because Michelle has been running the absentees, and she also does the bookkeeping down here. Paula just joined us recently. Carrie's stepping into working more and more on the absentees. And so our staff is very, very well trained and monitored. They do a great job, and so we've been very, very lucky that. I got to tell you, this is the Renaissance Center on 9th. This is an unbelievable location for so many reasons, not just for us, but for all the things that they do for the community here. The Renaissance is, it's known by the population of Manatee County. It's convenient. They got a great parking area. It's really it's a new location for us. We're really excited about it. And I think the voters are excited about it. And I think when you talk to them, you will find that everybody likes the Renaissance Center. Well, as you know, in Florida statutes, you can't film inside, but let me tell you what happens is when people walk in, they have their ID with them. And when we swipe their ID card, whether if it's a driver's license or a government ID, as soon as we do it, it verifies that they're voting at the right precinct, okay, that they're getting the correct ballot, and that they can vote for the people of their choice. Once that is done, then they are issued a ballot, and it's issued to them in a secrecy sleeve. They take that sleeve over with the ballot, go to a privacy booth, vote it in private, put it back in the secrecy sleeve, and take it over to the tabulator. The tabulator person then will slide that ballot in. Actually, the voter will slide their ballot in, and so nobody will ever see it. They'll hand the clerk the secrecy sleeve. Their ballot will go into the machine and be automatically tabulated for accuracy, and that's what they do. You know, we've got a staff of around 1,000 people that are working today, and all of those have been through training. The state of Florida mandates that training prior to any election. And in fact, it's interesting, people don't realize this, in the general election, those same people, hopefully those same people, will be coming back and have to be retrained again. And not because necessarily they need the training. The Florida statutes make sure that all of these people are well trained to do their jobs. So voting is a pleasant experience in Florida and not the complications that have been there in the past.
Well, this is great for us. I was just talking with someone earlier today, and we were saying that I think it's great to try to save the taxpayers money by reducing the number of polling places, and some of them are going to be cut. You don't know which ones, but it saves the taxpayers money. And we used to vote at the library, and the library was inconvenient. Although we live downtown, it was closer to where we live. It was still inconvenient because of the parking and so on. So this is a central location. I think everyone knows where it's at, so I think it's a great spot. Voting is our right. I hear people complain constantly about how things are going with the government, and yet many people don't get out and vote. And I think if you don't let your vote be known and let your voice be heard, then you have no right at all to say anything negative about what's going on in this country. So yeah, make it convenient, but even if it's a little convenient, people should get out there and vote.
Every absentee ballot we receive in the office, staff members go through, they look up that ballot, they scan it in, and they make sure that the voter had requested an absentee ballot, that the ballot is for the right election, and then they compare the signature that the voter put on the ballot envelope with the signature that we have on file. Most of the time, there is no discrepancy between the signatures, and they accept it. With the ones that they just don't feel confident enough with to make that determination, they set aside, and that's where we are right now. The canvassing board gets to make the final determination on those signatures. Voters register many, many years ago, and I know when I was 18 and I first registered to vote, my signature is nothing like that. Of course, I know better, and I've updated my signature to make sure it matches, but a lot of people have not done that, so we definitely encourage everybody to update their signature.
Okay.
A lot of voter registration now is happening through the DMV offices. When someone moves into the county or moves into the state, they change their driver's license, and at the same time, they are offered the opportunity to either register to vote or update their registration. And when they do that there, they take the same signature they use for their driver's license.
Last name.
That signature comes in on a digital pad. You know, a digital signature pad, and so that digital signature is, as you probably know from signing your credit card, you know, the credit card pads at Walmart or Kmart or anywhere, it doesn't always look like what you normally, would sign on a piece of paper. So that can be hard to compare. A lot of times you can find a lot of similarities, but sometimes it's a pretty far stretch to get that digital, wide, thick signature and compare it to a handwritten signature.
The canvassing board is made up of 3 members. There's the county judge, who is the chair. That's myself. The chairman of the county commission, that's Larry Bussell, and the supervisor of elections, Mike Bennett. The 3 of us have to review the ballots when they come in from overseas and absentee ballots where there are some errors in the ballot. The most common mistake is that a ballot might be sent to a husband and wife, and after they vote and stuff the envelope, they sign each other's envelopes. So we look at the envelopes from both of the spouses to confirm that it was an innocent error, and then authorize those ballots to be opened and the votes to be counted. Other times, after the absentee ballots are open, the voter has made some errors or changed their mind and made erasures. And again, we go through the ballot to make sure that we know what the voter's intent was, and then ensure that the election officials properly take account of that so that the vote is properly cast. Then there are cases where the absentee ballot signature doesn't match the signature on file, the exemplar, which many times could be years and years old. So the canvassing board is responsible for taking a look at all of those ballots to ensure that the person who's registered the vote is in fact the person who signed the ballot. And although we get literally thousands and thousands of ballots, this year more than 40,000 absentee ballots were sent out. The supervisor of election has said that we have received about 21 or 22,000. A small percent, about 1% or a little bit more than 1%, have to be reviewed individually, one at a time, by the canvassing board to determine if the vote can be cast or not. What's very important here is that we're taking the time, sometimes a lot of time, to look at each individual ballot to make sure that it is correct. When we're looking at the outside of the envelope to confirm the proper signatures, we are not seeing what the voter ballot actually says. The ballot itself is sealed. That's why when you get an absentee ballot, there's two parts to it. There's the ballot itself, and then there's the envelope you place the ballot in and seal it, so that when the canvassing board, if we have to look at it, we can examine only the exterior of the envelope and not the inside. So we don't know what the voter has actually voted. By the same token, if there's a problem with the ballot but not with the signatures, that will be discovered when the ballot is actually removed from the envelope by staff and put into the voting machine. The voting machine may kick it out, not accept it. If there's an overvote, which means the person's voted in one race for two or more of the candidates, or an undervote where the voter didn't vote for anyone, the machine will kick it out, and then the canvassing board has to look at the ballot to determine what is the voter's intent. Most of the time it's pretty easy to do. You can see that the voter had erased one of the entries, and the residue from the pencil remained in the circle, and so the machine wouldn't take it. So that's corrected. There is a replacement ballot that's actually prepared. We look at that, we authorize it to be used, and when we're going through this process, we don't know who the voter was. This is a ballot without a name on it because the name is only on the exterior envelope, which we don't see. The importance is that everyone's vote is intended to be counted. We're very careful to make sure only legal votes are counted, and that everyone's intent is clearly expressed. We make sure that it's clearly expressed before the ballot is finalized and put through the tally. Because even though we have thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of people who are voting and different races, we want to make sure that every vote is important.